Today, we are talking about vulnerability. My emotional being, my emotional state in earlier years had been weaponized and used against me. Wasn't a good feeling. You have to confront the walls that you've built to hide your vulnerability. Let me stop playing with my hands. I had to make the commitment to say I don't give a fuck. Okay, just me being a drama queen. Don't. Y'all know I'm dramatic. Black women have been through. I don't even have the words. Been through it, okay? The path that we forged was the path that we were meant to take. Hey love bugs! Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, hello, hi. My name is Christiana and I'm so happy to have you here. But let's get into this topic, y'all. I'm finally doing this video about vulnerability and I wanted to get this done today. One, because I actually got dressed, looked decent, my hair looks decent, although we are fighting the clock. We are fighting the sun. Sun is slowly setting and I love natural light better than the artificial studio lighting. So I'm trying to get this done before the sun goes down. And then also I wanted to get this done before this hair puffs up because y'all know I got about 2.5 seconds before this hair goes poof, frizzy. So let's get into the topic. Today, we are talking about vulnerability, and this is going to be layered because I want to talk about vulnerability generally, and then I want to talk about it through the lens of a Black trans woman, which is me, and how it is a little more nuanced and a lot more complex just given this experience in terms of tapping into vulnerability and using vulnerability as a strength, as a superpower, because I think a lot of times people consider vulnerability as something that's weak, a weakness. I think a lot of times we don't want to be vulnerable because it's uncomfortable. Why is it uncomfortable? It's uncomfortable because we've been told that being emotional and putting ourselves in a place of vulnerability can lead to negative feelings. And I think because we don't want to feel negatively, we avoid vulnerability, when in fact, we should really be leaning into vulnerability. It's on trend right now to, especially for women, especially for Black women, because Black women have been through, I don't even have the words, been through it, okay? And I think now a lot of Black women are really learning to lean into a soft girl approach, leaning into a soft girl era. And it's not always, we don't always have the luxury of being able to do so because of how society perceives us, how society treats us. But I think that tapping into vulnerability can be something powerful. So we're gonna dive into all of that a little bit deeper. But before we dive into anything, when I'm talking about a topic, what do I always do for my people who've been here? We'd like to define the term, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna define vulnerability so that we know what we're talking about. We have a better grasp as to what we're diving deep into, okay? So let's define vulnerability. In finding a good definition for our conversation today, because vulnerability can have a lot of different definitions, I wanted to look at vulnerability from a psychological perspective. So I want to, since we are talking psychology, we're talking, behaviors, and we're talking, how those behaviors are derived, what those behaviors are derived from. I wanted to go to a psychological resource to get a good definition of vulnerability. So I did just that. So let's talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability is when someone openly shares their emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. Doing so not only fosters open communication, but also helps to cultivate empathy within a relationship. Whether in our family or work environments, we are often in chronic environments of invalidation. We don't know when we'll be criticized next or believe we are only as good as our last mistake. We carry a weight of unpredictability. Nobody likes unpredictability and anxiety. It causes discomfort, but If we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable to other people, that keeps us from being seen by the people we care about the most. So what if we lean into that discomfort when it makes sense and use it as an opportunity to grow? It becomes easy to lean into openness once we learn the benefits of vulnerability. And that is a definition by the Psychiatric Associates. I also wanted to read another part on their website that talks about why vulnerability is so difficult. So let's dive into that. Being vulnerable causes us to be seen and exposed, sometimes creating an underlying fear of rejection. And then it goes on to explain, a woman named Michelle, who is discussing vulnerability in the website, goes on to explain this. And I quote, "What would happen to me if other people really saw me for who I am? Many people struggle with being vulnerable, and some people may be wired to be more threat sensitive and therefore more likely to want to protect their thoughts and emotions from others, even in safe social situations. It may feel as though this will protect us from emotional harm, but it can sometimes damage our relationships with others when we don't allow any of our vulnerabilities to show." Girl, if that isn't a word. So we are going to really dive in deep to all of this. I mean, to give you a little context in terms of my journey with vulnerability, I think we all kind of start off in our lives completely green, completely open. We are uninhibited. We love deeply and passionately. We are very open-minded, and over the course of our lives, we teach ourselves to protect ourselves from things that may have harmed us in some way, emotionally, physically, however we perceive something. If we perceive it as harmful, we self-correct, basically. We learn to protect ourselves from things that will not make us feel good, that may hurt us. And over time, we develop habits and behaviors that are just become innate. It just almost becomes unconscious. We unconsciously protect ourselves from harmful things. And I think as we move into our adolescent years, this was my experience, and please feel free to share your experiences with vulnerability, your journey with vulnerability down below. But my experience, by the time I reached my adolescence, I had become so accustomed to not being vulnerable that I became a complete recluse emotionally. I would be very guarded with my emotions. I wouldn't cry in front of people. I wouldn't really show much of anything because it had been weaponized. My emotional being, my emotional state in earlier years had been weaponized and used against me and made to be a weakness. So naturally, I learned to not give people that power. If I don't show people that I'm having an emotional response or that I'm really susceptible to the harm of someone attacking me, then they won't be able to call me weak. They won't be able to get to me, you know? So I think my adolescent years is when I've really honed in on that skill and really fine-tuned it so that it was top tier. And as someone who was grappling with identity issues, sexuality issues, I just couldn't find it in myself to really be completely open with anyone in my life about those things, because I felt as if I opened that gate, even if I cracked that gate a little bit, I would get attacked for revealing who I really was. So what did I do? I instead taught myself to blend into my environments. Whatever my environment called me to be, how I feel like I would be best received or accepted in an environment, I morphed into that. I became the ultimate chameleon. And I think that so many people do this. It kind of manifests itself in people pleasing and just loss of identity in general. And I definitely am guilty of both. I was a serious people pleaser for most of my teenage and young adult life. I didn't even know, I wasn't even aware of the fact that I was a people pleaser, but I was. I always wanted people to like me. I wanted people to accept me, receive me. One of my biggest fears in life was to be lonely or to be ostracized. And I had experienced a lot of that in my early childhood, just being different and not really just like being a stereotypical boy at the time, since I hadn't transitioned as a kid. So yes, vulnerability was something I was completely uncomfortable with until very, very recently. And I think when it comes to I'm a millennial, I'm 39. And when it comes to a lot of my millennial peers, I think that a lot of millennials are in a place in life now where they feel as if they're tired of trying to meet the standards, the metric, the status quo of their parents and other peers and loved ones around them, and they're looking to really just exist in a way that makes them feel most fulfilled. And in order to do that, you have to confront the walls that you've built to hide your vulnerability. Vulnerability is just, it's integral in growth and evolution, right? I don't feel that I would have ever transitioned or be where I'm at in life now mentally if I hadn't tapped into my vulnerability. It's something that I've worked very, very closely with my therapist on. I think it's something that you absolutely should work with a professional on. You can try to attack it yourself, but I don't necessarily think that you may find the kind of success that you're wanting to find by trying to do it yourself, you know? I think that you need someone that's going to be able to challenge you to think about life and think about things differently than you are accustomed to thinking about life. And I feel like it takes an objective third party to be able to look at your situation, look at your life, and to be able to give you a bit more insight into what it is that you're doing to protect yourself. So that's just my ramble, my spiel on vulnerability, generally speaking. And now I want to dive into it a bit more in terms of the trans experience, and how it was pivotal in me finding the gender euphoria that I needed, and how I still incorporate leaning into vulnerability into my life today in order to exist, thrive as a trans woman. It's not always easy. As you all know, if you are here, you either are trans, or you are an ally, or you are curious about the trans experience and this topic in general, vulnerability, and through the lens of a Black trans woman. So let's get into it. So I think that when I finally did come to the realization that I need to really stop and have the moment of introspection to figure out who it is I am. Who am I? What do I want to do? That in itself required me to lean into some vulnerability. Yeah, that's right. Because I had a hunch, a feeling that I was suppressing some things that I felt would make not just myself uncomfortable, but my loved ones, my peers, everyone around me uncomfortable. And in order for me to commit to exploring my identity and being okay with whatever revealed itself, I had to make the conscious decision to say, I'm going to put these walls down and I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to allow myself to feel the feelings that accompany the revelations that I'm about to unveil. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it took me a little while before I finally said, okay, I'm ready, I'm gonna do this. I mean, I visited, I dipped my toe in the water, and then I took it out. And then I opened the door a little bit, cracked the door a little bit, and then I closed it. I was like, I don't know. I think that I already have a system in place in terms of how I'm living this life. I'm doing this thing as a Black gay man. I don't feel that I identify with this experience, but I've pushed it this far, and this is already a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm not really sure what else is in the Barney bag, what else is in the mystery box. I'm nervous, and if it's anything that's more, I identify as something that's going to require me to tap into more strength, in the sense that I will be more marginalized. I mean, I had a hunch. Okay, I'm talking as if I didn't have a hunch that I felt like a woman, and that I was trans. I had a hunch after a bit. Like, check this video out here if you haven't already checked it out. It's about my transition journey, basically from gender dysphoria to gender euphoria, where we are today. We're that girl, we're confident, we're doing all the things, but it was a journey, and that video outlines that journey. Probably the most popular video on my channel thus far, because I don't know, people are interested in transition journeys. I'm interested in people's transition journeys. I think that there's a lot to be learned about just people in general, and I love people. I love people. I love, you know, how people behave. I love psychology. So those things interest me. I'm so sorry that I'm playing with my hair so much. It's a nervous tick, but I also am just slowly watching it puff up and do what it's doing in the viewfinder, and I'm just like screaming on the inside. I'm staying composed and talking to you about the topic on the outside, but girl, I'm just like, not my fresh hair. Not my fresh hair, just slowly dissipating in this hot ass room. It's like the pits of hell in here. But anyway, back to the topic. So, yeah, I had a hunch that what I was planning to unveil was going to be extremely difficult for me to navigate. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to put myself in a place of vulnerability to be able to navigate that situation. It was going to require me to completely override the identity that I had built. And when I say built, I mean handcrafted that identity, because nothing about who I was before this, I won't say nothing, okay, just me being a drama queen, don't y'all know I'm dramatic. Many aspects of who I was before were fabrications, in a sense, and the fabrications were derived from what I felt I should be, right? Just based on my interactions in society and norms, and just what I felt like would be received best, but also not completely sacrifice my happiness. So, you know, I was willing to push boundaries with sexuality, because, I mean, she's got needs, and I knew I liked men. Like, there was nothing that was going to make me not lean into that. I've always, from a very young age, I knew that I liked guys, men. So that was something I wasn't willing to compromise on. But other things, in terms of just like, okay, how I present. I have a very feminine aesthetic. I love femininity. I love dresses. I love, you know, a good floral, a good garment, girl. I love a good feminine garment. But I knew that in my identity, you know, the gender that was assigned to me at birth, male, the things that I would gravitate to were not acceptable in society. So I tried to, you know, walk the fine line, in terms of I leaned into a very androgynous kind of aesthetic for a long time. I would dabble in some women's clothing, but nothing too feminine that would really like set off alarms for people. But people knew me to have a very feminine kind of presence about me. Like, I always just had that feminine flair and vibe. So it wasn't too alarming for me to tap into some femininity, but to lean into full womanhood would have been jarring and alarming to people. So I steer clear to that because of my inability to tap into vulnerability, to tap into people maybe not having a positive response to it initially, or having any kind of response to it at all. I veered away from that because I wanted to keep things balance. I wanted to keep things, comfortable for other people. I'll be honest with you. I cared about other people's comfort way more than my own. I'm walking around miserable, presenting in a way that's absolutely not indicative of who I am, but other people are like, yes, look at you. Look at you doing that thing, and I'm just like, if you only knew what I really am, like what I really want to do, right? So I had a very interesting journey with vulnerability in the transition process, in the sense that I had to make the commitment to say, I don't give a fuck. I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to charge forward on this transition journey, and I'm going to unveil whatever it is I unveil, and your thoughts and opinions are, and maybe people may have a negative response, and it's something that I would have to deal with, right? My journey in bringing my experiences to the internet, it's the same thing. I feel like being a content creator as a Black trans woman was like another lateral or another parallel journey, transition journey, me transitioning my platforms to being just non-existent. I mean, really and truly, I disappeared off of social media because of my inability to be vulnerable, my inability to show people the true me in terms of physical, like how I was looking, especially like in the initial phases of my transition. I wasn't super comfortable with how I looked. I definitely wasn't comfortable with how I looked before I started transitioning. I didn't really think that I was attractive at all as a male. I just didn't. And I think that mindset also led people to believe that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if you project insecurity, then people see an insecure being. And insecurity is not particularly attractive to a lot of people. So there were physical insecurities, there were emotional insecurities. I had feelings, but I just didn't want to share them with the internet because it will unveil the true me, and it may cause people to reject me. And that is a big, big, big fear with vulnerability. When it comes to tapping into vulnerability, I think people are afraid of being their unfiltered self because someone that they love, respect, maybe not, maybe just some random Joe Schmo on the street is gonna be like, I'm not really feeling it. I don't really get it. You're a man. You're ugly. You're delusional. You're psychotic. And I think specifically as a trans woman, I think that the experiences that I went through and that probably many other trans women went through in terms of just being ostracized and being rejected, whether it be subtly or blatantly, I think make you so resistant and so hesitant to just be your unfiltered self for the fear of feeling that feeling over and over and over again. It wasn't a good feeling. And I was mortified in those instances. And I knew that I didn't want to feel like that. So I did everything I could to avoid feeling like that. And I lost a lot of valuable time. Again, I always follow that statement with, I have no regrets. Things transpire and happen the way that they're supposed to happen and transpire. However, do I wish I would have had the courage to lean into my vulnerability and to really not give a fuck what other people think and just have the courage to just be my unapologetic self? Of course I wish that I had had the courage and the strength to do it quicker, but we can't change the past, and the path that we forge was the path that we were meant to take. So take that with you. And I think that I really hit on all the topics that I wanted to hit on when it comes to vulnerability. Now I want to continue the conversations down in the comments because my hair is literally puffing up and y'all are tired of me throwing it. So let's continue to talk about this down below. What was your journey with vulnerability? Are you still embarking on a journey of vulnerability? I know that I have quite a few people that will comment on videos and thank me for sharing my experiences and talk about their journey and their path with, you know, tapping into their identity and finding the strength and courage to get to a place where they can be their unapologetic, 100% authentic self, you know? So I'm curious to know if vulnerability is something that is playing a huge part in stunting that process or that journey. I know it was a big factor in kind of slowing up my transition journey. But anyway, anything you want to talk about, let's talk about it down below in the comments. I'm going to put the link for the website that I got the vulnerability description and other details down below in case you are interested in checking their website out. It has a lot of really great, valuable information. Let me stop playing with my hands. And thank you again for watching the video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. We're trying to grow the community and that helps with the algorithm. And also, if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Trying to grow the community, y'all. I love having y'all here, and thanks again for watching this video. Hopefully it's not too chaotic, but it probably is knowing me. And I'll be back with another video soon. Okay? Bye.